Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, continuing on our pandemic projects, and to those first responders that are helping keep us safe, thank you very much for everything it is that you do, and we appreciate you watching in your downtime, which I'm sure is not much. Today I'm just going to answer a viewer's question. They said they have a Pflueger rocket. Well, I don't have the rocket, but I have a Skilkast here, and the Skilkast, the Akron, and this one's beat up. It's missing all kinds of pieces and parts. But the question says there's a problem with the level wind, where the level wind is not riding in the glue, that the line guide arm is outside of that. And they wanted to know, could they remove this without taking the whole reel apart? And the answer is yes. So we're going to show you how to do that today. There's 4 screws that enable you to remove the level wind feature and to service that independent of opening up the case to the reel. So let's go ahead and do that. Now you may need a micro screwdriver. This one's got a relatively thin blade on it here, so it can turn those screws, but if you need a micro screwdriver, by all means go to that. But there's 2 screws that hold this assembly on, one on each side, and you just simply want to remove those. So growing up, I was really never a fan of these. My dad loved them, but that was probably what he was growing up with. These reels were the first generation of level winds. Of course, the level wind reel is a very old reel. It was actually invented by William Shakespeare in the early 1900s. He got his inspiration from how a machine was putting thread onto bobbins, and then he adapted it, figuring out that the line, level line features of a fishing reel could be very similar to this acting as a bobbin. Okay, so I took the 2 screws out, one from each side. Then you can simply pull this mechanism out. There you go. So in servicing this now, we're going to go ahead and do the service because he's got that as well. So we're going to take the, now I need my micro screwdriver. We're going to take the cap that holds the pawl off. I just got a cheap set of micro screwdrivers. I don't use them much, but every now and then in reel repair you need to be more of a jeweler than you do a big picture kind of guy. And this whole set, I'm sure, was under $10. So you want to remove the cap. It's held in by a small screw. Those of you that watch my videos know me and small screws don't get along. But in this case, we will remove that for the point of showing you this. Then you have a clip that holds the pawl in. Then you have the pawl. Now the pawl is a forked tongue, kind of a cylinder, or a cylinder with a forked tongue up top. That pawl goes into the carrier, and then eventually you need to mate it into the groove of the worm gear, which is this piece. And then you want to just put a little drop of oil in there, not grease. Grease will bog it down. Put a drop of oil into there, and grab that cap and put that over the top. Put that little screw back in. And again, if you know me on these videos, me and that little screw don't get along too well. So this may take a moment. Patience and sense of humor is always a good thing with a fishing reel. I was told that very early. If you're going to do fishing reel repair, you better have both. Otherwise, you're bound to fail. Okay, and I just got the, I had to make sure that I could get that little groove in there. And then just test it, run the wheel, and you'll see that that level wind is moving along. It's slower than if you were wrenching it, but certainly it was okay. And then for the reel service itself, you just want to, I'm going to use grease. I'm not going to use grease, I'm going to use oil. I'm going to put the oil onto the worm gear. So I do that out of habit because most of the fishing that we do is salt water, and salt water carries micro sand and salt, of course. And when that dries out, it tends to clog in these these grooves. So if you put oil in, it's likely that it won't clog, or won't clog as badly. If you put grease in there, grease is going to hold it. So we're going to do that. Speaking of grease, we will put grease onto the drive gear for the worm, and that's going to go internal. And I'll just, I'm going to cycle that through so I can get it to a couple of different spots here. All right, and that's your worm gear service. So when the viewer asked, the viewer's got a problem with the line guide not being in the channel. I got a bigger problem here because all the screws are missing. That's not his problem, that's mine. But this is a parts reel. So what you want to do then is you just want to come back now, take the piece that you've serviced, you want to line it up so that it meshes. And as you're working it in, I've got this side plate all out of sorts here. This is this part of the side plate where this belongs. But as you're starting to work this in now, like this, you want to point that line gear to the channel where it's going to need to go, and then just continue to work it in until you have your slots lined up. We are almost there now. And I know you can't see this because it's out of sorts there. But now I have my 2 points lined up. I worked it in by pointing it this way. I have my 2 side screws open here. So we're just going to go ahead and put the screws back in. And that, my friend, is how you go ahead and service that line guide assembly on a Pflueger. In this case, it's an Akron or Skilkast. I think this is a Skilkast. The Akron, the Rockets, they all pretty much have that same exterior kind of a setup there. So if you have one of these, then that's the way to do it. And if you have one of these, hopefully it's in better condition than the one that I have here, because the one that I have here is missing the side plate screws, missing the channel guide. Clearly a parts reel. It's however, it's a beautiful parts reel. It has the gorgeous handle there from the Art Deco period. I'm going to guess this one was probably a 40s reel, 1940s. Could be a little bit earlier, could be a little bit later. It says model 1953. That's not the year it was made. Shakespeare actually had a coating on these. This isn't Shakespeare yet. Shakespeare did eventually acquire Pflueger, but I don't believe at this point that it was part of the Shakespeare enterprise. But eventually Shakespeare did buy out his competitor, Ernest Pflueger, and then he went on to manufacture some of the Pflueger reels in addition to his Shakespeare reels. And Shakespeare today is part of that pure fishing enterprise. So there you go. So we have a reel that it's working poorly because it doesn't have the side plate screws, but it is working. You can feel the tension in it as I do this, but you can see that it is working. So yes, the answer to your question is there's definitely a way to service this by just removing the exterior piece and not opening up the case for service. And I hope that this has showed you just how to do that. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Again, if you're a first responder, your efforts out there are appreciated. Special thanks and a shout out to you for all it is that you're doing to keep us safe during this pandemic. Here on the northeast coast, we're just opening up for fishing again, but the bad news is we're seeing that there's a high infection rate now in the south and in the west. To those of you that may have the virus, our prayers are with you. To those of you that may be nursing them back to health or to helping in the treatment of it, thank you so much for everything it is that you do. Your efforts really are appreciated beyond what can be said here in this little forum. So thank you again for watching. If you enjoy this, please subscribe to see more. If you have questions like that, please ask them. I try to respond to the questions and the comments in my videos. And to those of you that have other reels that you'd like to see repaired, please let me know what it is that you'd like to see me work on. Most of these are customer reels, and as those come into my shop, that's the source of the reels that I am working on. But a lot of times something like this that happens to be my parts bin and has a way to answer the question is how I set them up. So with that, I want to thank you for watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.